It is now revealed President Trump chose Ripple for the 21st century upgrade for banking and the financial system. We have some new information from Lord Belgrave saying that Ripple is at the heart of this new payment system, not just here in the US, but globally. I have a ton of information to back up what they're saying here. We're also going to look in the key details of this post. We also have a ton of other XRP-related news and info. If you get value, please show support on the content. Here's Lord Belgrave. Some years ago, I reviewed a confidential intergovernmental briefing circulated under NDA between several European states. The countries themselves were not named in the extract I saw, but they were not meant to be. What mattered was the operating assumption embedded into the document. The conclusion was straightforward. End users would never be presented with raw infrastructure. Institutions would continue to front technology and trade solutions under their own names, their own balance sheets, and their own brands. Trust in Europe especially would remain institutional. What sat beneath those branded solutions was a real focus. The document describes settlement rails that would be standardized across borders, invisible to the customer, but interoperable at scale. The emphasis was on neutral infrastructure capable of real-time value transfer once regulatory and identity frameworks were aligned. Ripple and the XRP ledger were referenced in that context, not as a consumer-facing product, but the underlying plumbing. The language was explicit that the winning technologies would never need to be marketed to the public. They would be embedded, abstracted, and eventually taken for granted. That is how institutions think. They do not sell rails, they sell services. The rail only needs to work. If this unfolds the way it is described, most people will one day use systems powered by XRP without even knowing its name. And from an institutional perspective, that's exactly how it was designed to be. Now, Stellar Rippler is commenting off this post, saying, "It is now revealed President Trump chose Ripple for the 21st century upgrade for banking and the financial system." Ripple and the XRP ledger were referenced as underlying plumbing infrastructure for banks and institutions in the intergovernmental briefings between European states. This essentially means SWIFT and institutions will use their own front-end interface, while Ripple and the XRP ledger will be the underlying infrastructure. This is exactly why President Trump said many Americans are unaware that our current banking system is out of date. The crypto bill will ensure a 21st century upgrade to the financial system. At the same time, Brad Garlinghouse said Ripple will not replace banks, but will essentially infuse them with Upwith to upgrade their technology. April 2026. Clarity Act. It's happening. No public or official evidence shows that President Trump has chosen Ripple or XRP as the new banking infrastructure. The post that you shared is mixing real themes with speculation and insider claims. I just want to be very specific. I can't confirm what this person is exactly saying. What I do know, and I can tell you, that every time the White House has a meeting to discuss the future regulation for this country for crypto, Ripple is invited to the meeting. However, how big or small that meeting is, they have a seat at the table with the US, UK transatlantic partnership. Who was in the room at Downing Street? It was Ripple. So, you have Ripple popping up in meetings with regulators all over the world to help set policy for this new financial infrastructure. That can't be a coincidence. I don't believe in them. That's exactly how this plays out. The invisible hand hidden in plain sight. XRP, let's go. All right, now here is where the European ledger comes in. XRP, Algo, XLM were reportedly verified as Europe's new ledger system, designed to connect central bank money, everyday payments, and digital assets in one framework. The screenshot is referencing the news of XRP Stellar and has been verified or integrated into what's being called a European Unified Ledger, a DTBAS-based upgrade path for Europe's existing target to securities, T2S's securities, settlement infrastructure, and future tokenized money assets. What is the European ledger, you ask? I got you. It's described as a shared digital financial system that brings tokenization, central bank money, and commercial bank money, and other digital assets onto a single programmable platform. Conceptually, it aligns with the ECB and has been calling for a European shared ledger, or interoperable DT network, to support tokenized assets and a digital euro building target services. The idea is to turn the traditional target to securities, T2S, security settlement layer, into a DTBAS-based infrastructure that can run 24/7 and handle tokenized securities, cash, and other assets in one environment. Crypto industry write-ups say XRP, Algorand, and Stellar have been officially verified on the European ledger, meaning that their networks are technically and procedurally recognized as compatible settlement rails with the shared infrastructure. So that's kind of the story here. And you do have, the ECB moving forward with XRP ledger technology and some of their pilots and trials. How is all of this going to unfold? That's going to be the real key to figure this out. Also, as all of this is happening, you have stable coins expanding on the XRP ledger, not just in US dollars, but in euros, as in real. And we're going to see a digital yen here launched sometime in the next few months. Definitely not a coincidence to see this announcement right after permission decks went live. And so this is auto-bridging between stablecoins on the XRP ledger. Auto-bridging via XRP is the most efficient trading route on a permission deck's order book on the XRP ledger. So you have the euro, the EURCV from SG4, so general. You have the EUR Europe from Schumann Financial, which is a much smaller European euro stablecoin. And then you have RLUSD, of course, by Ripple. You have USD, USDB by Bank, and then you have BRL, you have Brazil, the BBRL from Bank. So two different stablecoins from Bank down in Brazil. Now, here it is for Mr. Man. We are waiting for Ripple. Now payments ecosystem can be built out. RLUSD is one of few stablecoins that could populate the ecosystem, with XRP as the native asset acting as a bridge currency. Yeah. I was going to say something similar, like we haven't solved these yet. Payments, remittances, right? We've been talking about it in this space for a long time, and we're making progress, particularly, given the XRP, ecosystem and the kind of native chain rails that you guys have built. But it's not solved yet. So, stablecoins, I think, are the very best opportunity to once and for all make it not prohibitively expensive and difficult and slow to move money, across borders, or from company to employee, or from company to company, or what have you. And also, all right, let's continue here. Only Clarity Act will price XRP. the classification rally $5 to $10. The passing of the Clarity Act will formally codify XRP as a digital commodity, removing regulatory risk premium that has suppressed the price for years. The metric regulatory clarity and institutional access. The rationale: once XRP is legally on par with Bitcoin and Ethereum in the U.S., institutional allocators and conservative banks that are sidelined will hold the asset. A move to this range represents the catch-up growth, bridging XRP market cap in line with other major clear digital assets. The operational utility tier, $15 to $30. The scenario assumes full regulatory clarity, leads to integration of XRP into U.S. domestic payment rails, such as being used by Tier 1 banks, and for international liquidity or internal liquidity. The metric: integration of the U.S. banking networks. The rationale is for banks to settle large-scale transfers instantly, with liquidity pool must be deep, for XRP is at 140. You would need one for 1 billion. You would need a whole lot of XRP to be used, and the slippage to do that transaction would be very volatile. At a price of $20 or more, the asset becomes thick enough to facilitate multi-billion-dollar banking settlements. And of course, the potential for peak 100, the most bullish hypothetical scenario where Clarity Act enables XRP to act as a primary liquidity layer for U.S. banking network, the price must scale to the total value. Honestly, if that were to come play, you know that this would happen. The FOMO behind XRP and the available supply, I'd imagine the price would be larger than that. But you know, we'll have to see how all of this plays out. Now, we are getting new information here from Deanna and other sources on X. Dubai government puts $5 million in real estate on-chain via the XRP ledger. $7.8 million in property tokens now tradable. Dubai Land Department has officially launched Phase 2 of its real estate tokenization project, enabling controlled secondary market trading of tokenized properties directly on the XRP ledger. After a successful pilot that tokenized 10 properties worth over $5 million, approximately $7.8 million in tokens, are now eligible for resale in regulated secondary environments. I know you're looking at this and saying, "Sensei, this isn't a lot of money," but you got to start somewhere. This was a pilot. It was a successful pilot. Now we're in Phase 2. We can bring in a whole lot more value. And this shows other countries and other jurisdictions and other states or, anywhere else in the world that you can now tokenize real property on the XRP ledger and have it tradable. This is a real proof of concept that has moved forward to utility phase, and I love to see that all on-chain transactions continue to run on the XRP ledger, secured by Ripple custody and partnership with Control Alt. And so, here is that news. And Reese Merrick did chime in here. He said, "Thrilled to see Phase 2 launch for Dubai Land Department Real Estate Tokenization Project. Building on the pilot, controlled secondary market trading is now live for tokenized properties on the XRP ledger, secured by Ripple custody." Great to see that. And then, of course, Bank XRP said, "Secondary market trading, powered by Control All infrastructure, secured by Ripple, and built on the XRP ledger. Real estate liquidity starts today." Now you also, from Bank, you have Soil brings real-world asset yield to RLUSD. Soil has launched the first real-world asset-backed yield protocol on the XRP ledger, bringing institutional-grade returns to RLUSD. 1 million in pools filled in 72 hours or less. XRPL officially flips Solana in tokenized robot asset value. The utility of Ripple. Stablecoin is expanding fast. Why this matters? It turns RLUSD on the XRP ledger from just payments into a regulated yield and real-world asset platform, which is exactly the lane Ripple is trying to own, an institutional crypto. SOIL is the first ever compliant reward asset stablecoin, offering 5 to 8% fixed APR on vaults funded with RLUSD and backed by things like private credit and tokenized U.S. treasuries that instantly upgrades RLUSD from transactional stablecoin into a yield-bearing asset with institutional-grade fixed income characteristics, which is what banks and funds actually want if they're going to park serious size on-chain. This first 1 million in vault capacity filled in under 72 hours, signaling real demand. When giving Ripple a clean narrative that regulated money plus regulated yield on the XRPL is not just a theory, it is a reality. And here is a chart analysis for XRP hitting $83. In fact, since we marked the low in 2020, and getting a fib on from that low back to the previous all-time high in 2018. This is the Fibonacci extension targets. So these targets I've been watching for 4 to 5 years. You know, $8, $13, and $27. And standard charters got $7, $12.60, $19, and $28. All of those targets align with the Fibonacci extensions, or very, very close, if less than $1 shy between all of the targets, right? So, standard charters are also, you know, one of the largest banks in the UK. It doesn't guarantee anything, I'm not saying that, but there's just confluence with the targets that I've had on the charts for years. And I get accused all of the time, you know, you're pulling the targets out of thin air. No, I'm not. XRP met previous 1272, 1414, and 1618 extensions in its last cycle. Wipe on it, meet it again. All right, fair enough. Thank you, sir. And Paul Barron says, recent research from our team reveals something big is brewing off the soon-to-be heels of the Clarity Act with Ripple and XRP and RLUSD, and it's hidden in plain sight. This could be the Ripple's team's biggest bombshell yet. We'll air more this week. Lock in. Is this just more puff and fluff from Paul Barron? Or is something serious about to drop with Ripple and XRP? Are you prepared? Are you ready? I will bring you. Either way, I'll bring you the updates and information as soon as we get them. Make sure that you're subscribed if you got value from the content. Like, share, leave a comment below.